guys! Today I'm going to be talking about the 10 plant care tips I wish I had known as a beginner plant parent. It's like lately a lot more people are getting into the houseplant thing. They're joining us, becoming one of us. I thought that sharing some of these plant care tips and tricks that I've learned since the beginning of my plant keeping days, really with everybody, but especially for beginners, I think that they could be helpful. They're kind of a place to start in terms of plant care, so it isn't like too overwhelming. I remember being super overwhelmed, like researching plant care advice and stuff. Anybody else? I was super overwhelmed by it, particularly fertilizing. Anyway, I hope some of these are helpful. If you have any plant care tips and tricks, please also leave them in the comments down below. Let's just get into it. Trick number 1 is bottom watering. This is my number 1 favorite like plant care hack. It's not really a hack. I think especially in the beginning, a big problem people tend to have is they overwater their plants. I mean, for me, that's how it was. Bottom water does prevent a lot of the root rot overwatering issues because the plant soil is able to just absorb what it needs. I do it one of two ways. So one, you can use cover pots. So basically, this is my preferred method. I do keep a lot of my plants in their nursery pots, and then as I repot them, I'll just put them in a size larger nursery pot, but I'll keep them in the nursery pot that has like the drainage holes on the bottom, and I'll put them in a cuter like cover pot like this. Doesn't have a drainage hole, and I'll just go ahead, put water in the bottom of the cover pot, sit the plant in it. Me personally, I just wait until the top layer of soil starts to look a little damp, but isn't all the way saturated yet. And that's when I'll go ahead, I'll take the pot out and just dump out any of the excess water in the sink, put the nursery pot back on the shelf, and it's watered. The plant absorbs what it needs to absorb. Just keep a little bit of an eye on it. Make sure it's not sitting in the water for too long because you can end up with root rot that way as well. And then I guess the other way that I kind of bottom water, not kind of, that I do bottom water is, oh, this guy's thirsty. Ooh, very thirsty. If you have a plant pot that has drainage holes, I haven't repotted this, it's still just in the nursery pot I bought it in. You can put it in these little plastic trays. I really like these ones I got from Amazon. I think it came in a set of 15 or 16 or something like that. Anyway, I'll link them in the description. You can put your plant in it, and you're just going to add water into the little thingy, and then throughout the day I'll just kind of check on it. If I've noticed the water has been all the way absorbed, I'll go ahead and give it a little bit more until it's not absorbing any more water over time. But if I notice there's water sitting at the bottom and the top of the soil is starting to dampen, just like with the cover pot version, I just dump out the water out of the thingy, the tray. Is that what that's called? And that's that. Highly, highly recommend at least giving it a shot. Tip number 2 is to clean your plant leaves consistently. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. Minimum, I would say spray off your plant with water every once in a while. I used to be really on top of this, and I clean my plants at least once a month. It's really important for your plant health. Not only does it help your plant absorb more light, but it also prevents pests on your plant. It kind of gives you a time to really get in close to your plant as you're wiping down the leaves to see if there's any pest situations going on. So it's really good to stay on top of like that if you can. There are a lot of different things you can use to clean your plants. I've used lemon and water to clean like hard spots. I use dish soap, essential oils, water. Lately, I have been using neem oil mixed with water, and I'll just clean my plant leaves with that because it is also a pet prevention measure. So yeah, definitely be sure to clean your plant leaves. Don't forget about that. Basically what I do, I just mix my neem oil. It says like on the bottle, I buy the concentrate. I'll also link the kind I use down below. I mix it with water in a spray bottle, spray it onto a microfiber cloth. I don't spray it directly on the plant because it does kind of smell and I don't want it getting everywhere. And then with the microfiber cloth, I just wipe down all the leaves. And if you want to, you can let the neem oil dry and then rinse your plant off, but I actually don't rinse my plant off. I just let the neem oil dry on there and leave it like that. Next tip is to propagate your vining trailing plants for a fuller plant overall. An example is my Scindapsus. Every once in a while, it just grows. It grows to a point where even though it's getting adequate lighting, it still just looks kind of leggy, and by leggy I mean there's a lot of gaps between the leaves, so there's a lot of stem poking through that I just don't like the look of. It just looks a little bit thin and not as pretty. That's just not the look I prefer. I prefer a very lush full plant, and the way you get a plant to look this full is take cuttings from the bottom of the plant where it starts to look leggy. So like I could take a few cuttings off of this. You see there's a lot of space between the leaves. You can go ahead and take those cuttings, stick them back into the mother plant soil. It'll look a lot more full. So that's what I've done over time with this Scindapsus plant. It definitely didn't have this many stems in it when I bought it. As it grows, I just take cuttings, put them back in soil, and treat it like I do the regular plant, and over time I end up with a more full plant. He's making me bald, guys. He's always ripping out my hair, huh? And on that same note, you don't necessarily have to obviously propagate the cuttings back into the main plant. You can also water propagate them or propagate them in sphagnum moss in like a propagation box, which is what I prefer to do lately, and that works really well as well. And then once you get the roots, you can go ahead and pot it up. And there's a better survival rate that way, I found, so it's just up to you. My next tip slash trick is to watch for yellow leaves on your plants. Yellow leaves tell you something is wrong, and most often yellow leaf means the plant is overwatered, but it can also mean underwatered, which I know is really confusing. Sometimes you see a yellow leaf and you think the plant's thirsty, but that isn't always the case. So how you tell what your yellow leaf means is you're going to want to feel the soil. Feel the soil. If the soil feels wet to the touch, your plant is most likely overwatered. And if the soil is of course dry to the touch, then that means your plant is thirsty, and that's why the leaf is yellowing. So pay attention to your plant signals. Another signal you should watch for, I guess, that kind of goes along with this is wilting of your plant. Same thing, wilting can mean over or underwatered. So be sure to fill the soil before taking action of watering or not watering. A combination of the symptom and how the soil fills will tell you what the plant needs as far as water goes. A household item you can utilize for your houseplants or even outdoor garden is hydrogen peroxide. 3% hydrogen peroxide is what I'm talking about in particular. There are several different ways you can utilize this. I use it as a plant medicine, so I do have a full video about this. I will link it in the description box so you can watch the full video with more information. But dilute hydrogen peroxide with water and water your plant with it to help bring back a sick plant. It'll kill any fungus in the soil, bad things. Keep in mind it can also kill the good things as well, so use it sparingly and only as a last resort. If your plant has root mealies, you can use hydrogen peroxide to kill those root mealies, and root mealies are no joke, you guys. They are no joke. And hydrogen peroxide will get rid of them. But again, just keep in mind that if you water your plant with the hydrogen peroxide, it also gets rid of the good things in the soil, so you do need to replace those good things in the soil. Over time of having a plant, especially if you top water your plant just with like a watering can, like most people water their plants, the soil can become compacted, and compacted soil can lead to root rot. The roots need air to be able to not get root rot. Science. And a way you can avoid that is by aerating your plant soil. So you can use a fork, a stick, a pen, anything you have laying around. What you're gonna do is just really carefully toss the soil around the plant to fluff it up a little bit and give the roots a bit more airflow. Again, this really helps prevent root rot issues, so I recommend doing it. This plant has been in this pot for a long time. The soil is really pressed down. You see it's not fluffy at all. I have to really force my finger in there to be able to move the soil at all. So this is the perfect plant that I would go ahead and aerate. But when you're doing that, just be careful that you're not touching the roots or disturbing the roots too much. If you do a little bit, it's okay. Don't go stabbing the roots with a fork repeatedly, ripping them up. That's not gonna be good for the plant. All right, my next tip is to adjust your soil mix for your tendency. So even if you're not mixing your own soil at home, which is what I personally prefer to do, if you're buying bagged soil, you still can adjust the soil to your tendency. And what I mean by that is if you're a chronic overwaterer, you can add perlite or pumice to the soil mix to help aerate it a little bit, make it a little bit chunkier, so that the water will flow through a little bit more freely and not hold on to moisture as long. And if you're an underwaterer, then you can not add as much perlite and pumice. You can add things that hold on to moisture like sphagnum moss. Oh, and here's the soil mix I'm currently using. So this is cocoa coir. I have a little bit of, what else do I have in here? Pumice, a few of the little leca balls, orchid bark, a little bit of sphagnum moss, just a tiny little bit, some charcoal, mosquito bits. I sprinkled in some diatomaceous earth and cocoa husk, and it's really good. Oh, and I added worm castings into this as well. And I guess along that line, you don't have to adjust the soil to just your like care tendencies. You can also adjust them to the plant. So if it's a cactus, you can make the soil chunkier and more airy so it's not as easy to overwater. And if it's calathea or something, then you can add more of the moisture retention properties. So yeah, of course, do your research on your plant and pot it into something that makes sense with that plant. Something else I feel gets a little bit confusing, especially in the beginning, if you're getting a lot of plants at one time, is fertilizing. That is why I follow the like mantra. Is it a mantra or a motto? I don't know. What's the difference between a mantra and a motto? The saying I live by that my mom has repeatedly said in her YouTube videos is weaker weekly as far as fertilizing goes. So I do fertilize, feed my plants every single time I water. And the way I do that is, number one, I mix worm castings into my soil mixture prior to potting up my plants. So, and then even as I go in to aerate my plants, I'll put a little bit of this at the top of the soil, and then I'll go ahead and toss the soil around my plant to help mix it in a little bit, because I am bottom watering. If I just sprinkle it on the top, it wouldn't water it into the plant. I do prefer organic fertilizers. I guess that's kind of another part of this tip, is to use more natural organic fertilizers. So I really like to use worm castings. Like I said, I'll mix that into the soil. Really quick example, this is my soil mixture. I will go ahead, take my little shovel out of here, my little gardening shovel. This one is better actually. And I'll just take a few scoops. It does have directions on the back for how much you're supposed to add, but I don't follow that. I just add what I want to add. And I do add it liberally. I've never had an issue with this stuff burning my plants. So I don't know, just mix it up into whatever soil mix I'm using at the time. I have been changing it up often, quite a bit lately. It's mixed in, and now when I go ahead and pot a plant into this mixture, I don't have to stress too much about fertilizing. I've also been known to use fish fertilizer, which I really, really love, but it is stinky, you guys. It is smelly. That's why also the weaker weekly is better. I'll dilute that by like a quarter or even an eighth sometimes, so that it's not smelly on my indoor plants or my outdoor plants. You guys, it reeks. I'm being so honest with you. I should mention, since I bottom water, I do just mix it up in the water, and then I'll add it to my container to bottom water, let it drink it up just like I would if there wasn't fertilizer in the water. But I do this, I do this every single time I water, at a little bit of a weaker ratio so that it's not overpowering and it's not going to burn my plants. My last tip is to keep your plants a hobby, not a chore. I've talked about this time and time again. I'm going to keep saying that, but it really is so important. Like, I know it's so tempting to get as many plants as we possibly can because they're all so beautiful and we want as much beauty surrounding us as possible. At least I know I do. I don't know about the rest of you, but keep in mind that you're gonna have to care for those plants. I just don't stress about my plants as much as I used to. If my plants are needing something, but I'm just not in the mood to take care of them, within reason, of course, I let myself have a day before I take care of them. I don't stress about getting everything done with their care right away, right now. And not only is it done better for like my mental health, but also my plants actually end up doing better. I don't know what it is. They like a little bit of neglect. So don't feel bad if you're not rushing to do what it needs right then and there, or sticking to your schedule 100%. Chances are it's going to be okay. And what's the point of having plants if we're not enjoying taking care of them? So yeah, that's my last tip. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't get me wrong, I love taking care of my plants. I love it so much. Even to the point that sometimes I buy plants that I know are divas just because I want to be able to take care of something constantly. Don't feel bad if there's a day when you don't want to take care of your plants, and don't force yourself to constantly stress about your plants. On that same note, if you find yourself that you've like acquired a whole bunch of new plants, you're having a hard time taking care of them, it's just constantly weighing on the back of your mind in not a good way, maybe it's time to gift or sell or trade some of those plants, give them to someone else, move them along in their life and in your life, because ultimately it's not worth any added stress. Also, if there's a plant you have in your collection that isn't perfect, I'm staring at a whole bunch of not perfect plants right in front of me. Like this plant here has an ugly leaf, or this plant, I forgot to water it a couple of times, so it has a dead leaf there and a yellowing leaf there. I'm not going to beat myself up for it over it, because we make mistakes, and here's the cool thing about plants: even if one leaf dies and falls off, there will be more to come. Don't beat yourself up if your plants aren't perfect. That was a dramatic little spiel I had, but I feel strongly about it. Nobody's plants are 100% perfect, so don't feel like your plants need to be perfect. Those are the 10 best plant care tips and tricks and advice I guess I could give that I wish I had heard from someone in the beginning of my plant collecting journey all in one place. I definitely think a lot of these care tactics have made quite a big difference in the health of my plants. I hope that those tricks were helpful for you. Again, if you have any additional tricks you think would benefit some newbies or people who are feeling overwhelmed with their plants, leave them in the comments down below. It's super helpful to myself and those others. Whew. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.